A very good morning to all of you. As I mentioned earlier, we have been talking about preface to the plays of William Shakespeare by Dr. Samuel Johnson. And in yesterday's lecture, we understood that his preface to Shakespeare was published in the year 1765, and here he argues in defense of William Shakespeare. Rather, it is a comment on the argument over the ancients and moderns. And then we understood that through this particular critical essay, Dr. Johnson is trying to point out the excellences and defects of William Shakespeare, one of the greatest Elizabethan dramatists. And he praises William Shakespeare for many of his aspects. His reputation, he thinks, stood the test of time. At the same time, he has got highest praise for Shakespeare as he holds up to his readers a faithful mirror of manners and life. And Shakespeare's characters, unlike the phantom which other writers raise up before him, are real men and women. And he also defends the intermingling of tragedy and comedy by Shakespeare. Now, in this part of my lecture, I shall be talking about his argument, his comment on William Shakespeare's characterization. So when we talk about characterization, in terms of characterization, Johnson defends Shakespeare. So you need to be very much clear regarding the neoclassical stand, regarding the characteristics of neoclassical literature and criticism. We are already familiar with the fact that the neoclassical writers favored ancient writing, and for them, the ancient Greek and Roman writers were the models. In that context, William Shakespeare wasn't an ancient writer for the neoclassical writers. And there was a kind of argument between, among the scholars of that period regarding the greatness, superiority of the ancients and modern writers. And comparatively, as you know, during that period, Shakespeare was a modern writer. And Johnson defends Shakespeare in terms of his characterization. For his characterization, he states, while defending Shakespeare, he states that characters in Shakespeare's plays are a faithful representation of humanity. His characters, like Hamlet and other, Macbeth, etc., are the faithful representation of humanity. They are universal. Means their nature is applicable to the people across the world. At the same time, they are individual as well. So Shakespeare's characters are not exaggerated. Unlike Aristotle's concept of the tragic hero. Means rather I can say that he's following Aristotle's theory, because Aristotle favored such kind of characters who's not too virtuous or too bad. A hero should be the mingling, the combination of both qualities. So Shakespeare's characters have the common feelings and virtues of humanity. We can take the example of Shakespeare's Iago from Othello, Hamlet, Desdemona again from Othello, Macbeth, the title character. So Hamlet is the title character, Iago and Desdemona are from Othello. Othello is the title character, is the protagonist, and Iago is the antagonist, you might be knowing. And Desdemona is Othello's beloved wife who falls in love of Othello, and then she becomes his wife, she marries him, and Othello murders her out of suspicion because of Iago. So all these characters, Iago, Hamlet, Desdemona, Macbeth, and other such characters in William Shakespeare's plays are the true human types. Means these characters are universal. They represent human nature and they're found all times in all places. Means they are timeless characters and they cannot be restricted to only Denmark, UK, Britain, etc. They are beyond such places. They are universal characters in that way. Means such kind of human beings can be found in any part of the world and at any time, maybe in ancient times or in modern times. So Shakespeare has been much criticized for mixing comic and tragic elements in his plays. But Johnson defends this particular intermingling of comic and tragic elements in his plays by William Shakespeare. He defends William Shakespeare with the help of following points in the following ways. According to Johnson, William Shakespeare was true to nature. Okay, means he tried to write in a natural manner, depict his characters in a natural manner. Because in real life also, there is the intermingling of good and evil. Yesterday I had mentioned this point. Our human life is not just full of good things or full of bad things. It is the combination of good and bad. Every human being is neither too good nor too bad. That is being human, we can say. Human life is full of joy and sorrow, tears and smiles. And when we understand the intermingling, the mixing of tragedy and comedy in this context, Johnson thinks that this intermingling is quite natural. It is rather quite human, because Shakespeare holds a mirror to nature. He shows whatever is there in the nature. He does not go away from nature. So it is tragic comedy. We call these such kind of plays wherein tragedy and comedy are intermingled, are mixed. Okay, that genre is called tragic comedy. You studied The Merchant of Venice in your SYBA drama. So that was a tragic comedy. So there is, in such play, there is a combination of pleasure and instruction. Pleasure means we get joy. We are entertained. At the same time, the writer tries to give some lesson for life. There is a seriousness and happiness in that play. Bassanio, for example, represents this gay or happy side of life. On the other hand, Antonio is a very serious person. So Bassanio is in love with Portia. That is a kind of pleasure. But when Antonio's life is in danger, we understand that Bassanio is responsible for plunging Antonio's life into danger because of his spendthrift nature. Bassanio borrows money from Shylock. So his friend's life is at stake because of Bassanio. So there is a pleasure and instruction. We understand. We learn some lesson for life. At the same time, we learn a lesson for Shylock as well. So tragedy, the combination of tragedy and comedy, that is tragicomedy, can satisfy a great variety of tastes, as well as pleasure. When you laugh, when we get joy, then as well there is a kind of what you call a pleasure. Means there is a kind of happiness in such things as well. And this pleasure is also presented in different forms. There is a variety. So Shakespeare tries to bring variation in the presentation of his characters, in the presentation of his storyline, etc. Therefore, Johnson defends William Shakespeare in this regard. Further, Johnson defends Shakespeare on the ground of three unities: unity of time, place, and action. According to Johnson, Dr. Johnson, Shakespeare has well maintained the unity of action. His plots have a beginning, middle, and an end. So this is maintained in his tragicomedy, in his plays. So all events are logically connected with each other. One event is logically connected with other. Means there is the proper connection. It is a well-structured, well-knit plot. And the plot makes gradual advances towards denouement, against the solution, against the end. You must be knowing the 5 steps in the development of the plot: exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement or catastrophe. These are the steps. These are the stages. And his plot makes a slow advancement towards denouement. And the spectators show no concern to time by looking at the clock or calendar. There is no regard for the unities of time and place. The spectators are not concerned with such things. Therefore, Shakespeare does not consider the unities of time and place. So Johnson defends Shakespeare by stating that there is no absurdity in showing different actions at different places. So Shakespeare violates these three unities as well. Okay, the unity of action is well maintained. But when it comes to the unity of time and place, there is no concern, or these unities are not mentioned by William Shakespeare. But still, Johnson does not find any kind of absurdity in it, because showing different actions at different places is perfectly acceptable in his view. Further, he thinks that the unity of time also has no validity, because a drama imitates successive actions, and just as they may be represented at successive places. Nothing happens at a time. Nothing happens at one place. There are different steps, different periods in human life, different times. Therefore, he does not find anything wrong in showing different places and different times, action at different places and different time. Rather, I think that this kind of representation of life can be represented at different periods, separated by the range of several years. It does not follow, Shakespeare does not follow the Greek unity of time, unity of place. This principle proposed by Aristotle, and Johnson does not find anything wrong in it. He defends Shakespeare for such violation of the unity of time and place. But the unity of action is well maintained, because the plot is well knit, well structured. The events are logically connected. So there shouldn't be any problem. That's what Johnson thinks about Shakespeare, and he defends him in this regard.